us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Remind us that all that we do here this evening and all that we accomplish is for the welfare of and in service to the residents of Monroe.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
The first item on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
Mr. Pastu, any amendments?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Any amendments or comments? With that, a motion.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $878,139.73, 878,139.73.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda from city council members to be pulled for further discussion? Seeing none. Any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda. Seeing none. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, resolutions adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Stillgrave, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. It's item 3920, public hearing, capital improvements program, fiscal year 2023 through 2029, and there are no comments on file in the clerk treasurer's office.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. It's item number 3920, public hearing, capital improvements program, fiscal year 2023-2029. Any public comments? Any comments from the public regarding the capital improvements program? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, item 3879, fiscal year 2023 through 2029 capital improvements program budget.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, I know this from our public hearing and our previous comments, this is a move to adopt. Comments this evening?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just again, asking council to finally adopt the capital improvements program. Back in December, staff presented to both the council and Citizens Planning Commission capital improvements program that is in excess of $100 million for that 6-year period. Some very large projects programmed for the upcoming fiscal 23-24 year as well. So with that, we'd ask for council's approval.
Thank you. I'll ask council if there's any comments on the capital improvements program budget. I know there's Mr. Pastu stated. We've had multiple meetings and opportunities, even through the Planning Commission and others, to weigh in. Any comments from council? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion.
Councilman,
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve fiscal year 2023 to 2029 capital improvements program budget. Move to adopt the fiscal year 2023-2029 capital improvements program budget.
Second.
motion by Councilwoman Germaine, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 3879, the capital improvements program budget. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3921, approval of conveyance of city property.
Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to have Mr. Cochran explain this transaction for City Council.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Mark Cochran, Director of Economic and Community Development. In working with the Assessor's Office, about 2 weeks ago, we discovered another piece of property that is owned by the city. I believe there was a map attached to your agenda that showed the piece of property, but it's adjacent to 207 South Macomb Street. There's about 6 parcels there in addition to this parcel that are owned by Mr. Gary Vashner. And we're having some discussions with him about the future of those properties because he owns 5 different parcels that are landlocked and non-buildable. And so we're looking at how we can combine those to sort of square out that block and get rid of those non-conforming lots and deal with those appropriately. But in working on this, we discovered a piece of property that's owned by the city. We don't have record on how this happened, but the piece of property literally measures 3 foot by 3 foot. It's probably a little bigger than this podium that's owned by the city. And so working with the Assessor's Office and Mr. Vashner on those properties, we would like to offer to Mr. Vashner, and he is interested in it, ownership of the 9 square foot parcel. However, we do have a condition, a recommended condition, if council would so consider, that the parcel be combined with the lot at 207 South Macomb Street. We looked at which parcel this 9 square feet should be combined with, and to make the most square, even an understandable legal description, it makes the most sense that it be combined with 207. So in addition to this just being a quirky thing that we discovered, City Council does have to authorize all conveyances of city property, so.
Any questions from council for Mr. Cochran? Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just wanted to make sure that Mr. Vashner is aware of all which we've got going on here in city.
Yeah, he was in the office last week talking to the assessor's office and myself about this.
Perfect, thank you.
But we've talked about the properties we have owned by the city and some that may be buildable, some that may be larger, some that may not be quite large enough. This is the exception of 9 square feet that I think we can move forward from, because I'm not sure how we'd get in there and tend to the 9 square feet as well. So with that, if there's no questions, a motion. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Conveyance of parcel number 39-00265-011 to Mr. Gary Vashner with the condition that the parcel be combined with 207 South Macomb Street, parcel 39-00265-000, and authorize the city attorney to prepare the necessary legal documents and authorize the mayor and city clerk treasurer to sign on behalf of the city.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Stilgrave, supported by Councilman Felder on item 3921, the approval for the conveyance of city property. Clerk, please call the roll.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining? Yes. Jermaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3928, approval of employment agreement, Matthew Vanasacker.
Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to have Dr. Everly introduce this item for City Council action.
Clerk Lavoie and council members. We are bringing forward, we're really excited to bring forward an employment agreement for your consideration of Matthew Vanasacker. Matthew's employment will be part of the reconfiguration that has occurred in our Economic and Community Development Department, and he would be serving as the Economic and Community Development Deputy Director and Neighborhood Services position. So you have in your packet his full draft of his employment agreement. And just to highlight that this agreement does follow suit with our non-union agreements here in the city, we have added to this agreement a component of education reimbursement, and that is aligned with our COMIA unit. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about Matthew Vanasacker's contract here and just provide any resources needed for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Everly. Any questions from council regarding this employment agreement? Okay. Mr. Pastor, any final comments? I'm going to add before I think that this moves forward with what council's kind of objectives have been as we move forward in our realignment that continues. It ties to what we just passed on our consent agenda on the amendment on position allocation that passed. And I think, so we're moving forward on the developments timely. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, motion would be in order.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to approve the employment agreement with Matthew Vanasacker to serve as the Community and Economic Development Deputy Director for Neighborhood Services and authorize the mayor, city clerk, treasurer, and city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder. Item 3928, the approval for the employment agreement. Matthew Vanasacker. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3911, Custer Airport ARPA Grant Agreement Approval.
Thank you. Mr. Pastou.
Your Honor, City Council's requesting approval of this agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation, Bureau of Aeronautics, a pass-through of federal American Recovery Plan funds for general aviation airports across the state of Michigan in this case here. The reimbursement amount is $32,000. And it reflects a reimbursement of costs that incurred mostly with personnel at the airport. And so just wanted to bring it to your attention, talk a little bit about that. But also I think it's important and, reflected in Mr. Lewis's fact sheet that this is not one of these federal programs where we're committing long-term to continue to maintain the airport. So I think in some ways that's in part why I put it under council action, is to make that point very specific.
Thank you. Any questions from council for Mr. Pastou? I'll just add on this one as well. I appreciate the information, not only in the fact sheet, but Mr. Pastou, if you're bringing up that's a notable exception on this agreement, that the requirement is on this airport operations, the 20-year timeframe is not the same in this, because we just had a work session last meetings that talked about long-term and the airport and if committing to certain funds, that 20-year commitment if received. So this does not fall within that. So I appreciate that being within the fact sheet, since we just chatted about these things. Other comments or questions from council? If not, a motion will be in order.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that the attached resolution be approved and that the Director of Engineering and Public Services or his designee be authorized to execute the contract and any necessary terms and conditions documents on behalf of the city.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stelgrave. Item 3911, the Custer Airport ARPA Grant Agreement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3910, property sale approval at 6369 Poinapo Road to Raw Water Partnership.
Mr. Pastou.
This is I'm not going to say a hard transaction to follow, but as you know, we had a rental property there that was on the site years ago where someone oversaw the raw water intake there at the station. We've subsequently, the last tenant has vacated the building. It's been demolished. It is owned at this point by the city water system. And what we're looking at doing is essentially transferring the interest in that to the raw water partnership with Frenchtown Township. And what this transaction involves is obviously a transfer from the city water system to the raw water partnership, but also conversely, in order to make this happen and for Frenchtown Charter Township to pay their share, that they would contribute $14,720 toward that would be ultimately deposited into the water system. And so this is kind of like the final step in which that property now will be part of the raw water authority where the intake takes place at this point. So if any questions, ask Mr. Leroy. He's in the audience if need be.
Thanks, Mr. Pastu. Any questions of Mr. Pastu or Director Leroy? Appreciate the information and details in this as well. I think, the understanding of, we're not just divesting of property and the reasons and purposes why and how this goes to be and what it's going to be used for, so. with
I
that-
might also ask if Your Honor, that you don't probably need to read the entire motion there. It is a little lengthy. Just to prove item 3910 as presented and recommended by staff would probably, I hope, be sufficient.
It's obviously within the fact sheet, it's in the, on the agenda, in the details of whether it's 1826 or 826 of property, so it's how is in the information, but it is accessible and available. So thank you for that, Mr. Pastu. With that, a motion would be in order.
Motion that we approve the item 3910 and everything that is wrote upon that, and move all the numbers and amend the budget as needed.
There's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 3910, property sale approval of 6369 Point of Pole Road to the Raw Water Partnership. Roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 3922, approval of Sawyer House apartment lease agreement.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. City Administration is requesting City Council approval of a lease agreement with the Sawyer Homestead to Kylie Arquette, who happens to be a cadet with our police operation. As I noted in the fact sheet, one of the issues is that the apartment is subject to our housing rental ordinance, and we had some concern regarding the flooring in the bathroom. Our building department, building official Lauren Bennis had secured a couple of cost estimates, one in excess of $18,000, the other was just under the $15,000 amount. I wrote this prior to getting the second one under the $15,000, but I still think the motion is probably fine in authorizing approval of the lease, but also granting me the authority to purchase that should it exceed $18,000, because it may very well be a change order. You never know. So at that point in time, I should point out that we've put money aside over the years. When the lease of $5,000 each year, we put that into an account, and fortunately, that was there and available for this expense in order for the repairs to take place in the bathroom there at the apartment unit. So, and at the end of after this, during the manager comments, I do want to talk about something related to the Sawyer House and its lease coming up.
Very well. Any questions from council on this? Obviously, it's a item that includes not only the lease agreement for the apartment, but also some repairs to the facility. If there's no questions, a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion to authorize the Sawyer Homestead's apartment lease agreement, subject to passing a rental inspection, and authorize the city manager to approve the low responsible bidder proposal should it exceed $15,000.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave. Item 3922, the approval of Sawyer Homestead apartment lease agreement, and included in that, of course, is the bid proposal and amounts authorized. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items this evening, Your Honor.
Very well. So before we start with council comments, I see that Judge Brown is with us this evening. Thank you for being here, and if there's going to be comments, or maybe later, but I just want to thanks for being here to join us at the city council meeting. So for council comments, it's February. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
I just have no comment tonight.
Okay. Councilwoman Vining.
We had a good time Saturday night. The RRCA put together a full day of activities that led up to the Spirit of Harriet Tubman playing. It was just a beautiful day downtown all day. I'm sure Andrew will speak more on that. And, no further comments.
Thank you. Councilwoman Germaine.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to welcome Mr. Matt Vanasacker to the administration team. He will definitely be a complement to the administration and Mark's department. So welcome and congratulations to him. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Happy Fat Tuesday to everybody. It's a Christian right to have that, and it's a beautiful thing, I'd say, especially if you had your punchki today. But speaking on other terms of fatness and people are getting fat, railroads around the country are getting fat on a lot of money, and they're not doing a lot of work to their infrastructure. And I just want to make sure that we are prepared, and I see that we had a letter wrote per our instructions from our last council meeting to the, not only to the railroads, but also to our representatives in the area, senators and the federal government as well. And I just want to know that we are prepared and that we have every answer possible that we can have here in the city of Monroe, especially with the infrastructure lacking down at the Norfolk and Southern tracks here in our east side of Monroe, that we are prepared for anything, any incident that can come up. I know that we're in some ways tied at our hands on some instances, but you know, I know that we have somebody in the audience tonight that might be able to help us a little bit address that situation. One of our commanders in the public safety department. And if he has an answer for some of that, I'd appreciate it, just to say that we're moving towards that, having complete compliance with what we need to do in the city of Monroe to make sure that our residents are safe. That's my biggest goal here, is to make sure that our residents are safe in a very dangerous area, what I see. And it's been known that within the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've had several incidents with Norfolk and Southern, and I'm sure that there's other railroads that have equal problems, but none was quite larger than the incident in East Palestine, Ohio. I just want to make sure that we don't have that same situation here in Monroe, and that we doom our city like I believe that East Palestine has been. Is it possible I could have Commander Wall come up and address some of that, possibly?
I'm not sure if it's the commander, but I know Mr. Pastu has some comments.
To possibly address it during your comment time, whichever.
You're during that time.
That'd be great.
Okay, yep.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Felder.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Congratulations to Mr. Vanasacker. That kid's got a good head on his shoulders, for sure. Glad to have him on board. As Councilwoman Vining mentioned, yeah, I was going to let it go on by, but I guess now I'm forced. Thank you to everyone who came out for the event series this past weekend. I know we got 2 more events coming up to celebrate Black History Month, so I hope that you were able to make it to those as well. But I think that we're just under 400 attendees right now for all the events of the series, and I'll save you the thank yous because I don't know that we have the time. That's all I got for this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do have some comments this evening. I'll just start and follow up with Councilwoman Vining and Councilman Felder. It was a wonderful event at the RCA. The spirit of Harriet Tubman. Leslie McCurdy is an outstanding, fabulous, I'll say, actress and just a presenter. And afterwards spent time to take questions, and everybody learned a little bit even more about her and her history. And she's Canadian, and how she got started in her career. But in the program, it had a whole list of her accomplishments and what she was involved with: actor, playwright, dancer, choreographer, singer, and mentor. And just to see the credits that were here were fabulous, but it was an outstanding presentation. If you were not able to attend, and she does come back here or somewhere nearby, I highly recommend that you go and see a presentation of Leslie McCurdy, and especially the spirit of Harriet Tubman is just fabulous. As we continue through Black History Month, there was many other opportunities here as we go through the end of the month, both through the RCA. The museum had activities this past weekend as well. If you wanted to see a local artist, Stacy Hall And it was neat because with families, parents, children, just doing some basic watercoloring was fabulous. And it was a nice presentation, but also at the community college. So please pay attention to items that are available and learn about our history. So I have also just want to make a comment as well. As was said, the employment agreement with Matt Vanasacker. I look forward to Matt joining the city team. He's definitely very engaged within our community in his current position and activities with the Business Development Corporation, now the Business Alliance. But he brings not only his knowledge of, being raised here and living in Monroe, but through his university days and now in a professional stand. So I know he'll hit the ground running for the city in his new employment. Last item I have is this past week also, there was recognition ceremony from the Monroe Exchange Club, which is the 56th annual Law Day they had. And it was recognition of a law enforcement program. When there were 6 that received recognition, but I will speak to Officer Sean Coach from the Monroe Police Department, which was selected as the Officer of the Year for the city of Monroe. So I just want to congratulate him. It was a great presentation for all those that received. I know there was articles written as well. So if you see Officer Coach, Sean Coach, please give him congratulations for his being selected. And that comes both from not just the command staff, but also the employees within the police department, public safety for that recognition. I think I'll end there. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I don't have any comments this evening, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple items. Regarding the letter to Norfolk Southern, as Mr. Lewis and I drafted one up today and sent to a representative that Mr. Lewis is working with Norfolk Southern. And I'll just read it in quickly into the record so that everyone is aware what the content of the letter is. At their February 6, 2023 meeting, the Monroe City Council requested that city administration prepare a letter to Norfolk Southern Railroad regarding its concerns associated with the structural integrity of the retaining wall separating the railroad on Kentucky and Kentucky Avenue. The retaining wall has numerous cracks and sections of concrete that have broken away from the wall in the past, requiring repairs on numerous occasions. In light of the Norfolk Southern derailment that took place in East Palestine, Ohio, and out of concern for the safety and well-being of Monroe residents, the City Council requests that you reply to the city and indicate the railroad's position on the structural integrity of the retaining wall and identify what, if any, improvements or repairs will be contemplated. It is our intent to present your response at the Monroe City Council's March 20th, 2023 meeting under its communication section. If no reply is received, it will be noted on the city council agenda. So I think it's important to let council and the community know. You made it pretty clear at the last meeting, and this only pertains to the structural integrity of the wall. I know there's another number of other issues related to that, but that probably represents the greatest risk that you would have given the railroad that runs through there and its close proximity to the neighborhood there. So having said that, it'll be on the March 20th meeting, regardless of if we got a response or not, and incorporate it at that point in time. I know you inquired to Commander Wall regarding public safety. I think their primary focus is going to be in the unfortunate event, if there is a derailment, how emergency management would respond. Certainly, we've got that potential identified in the countywide emergency management plan, but also it would certainly activate here at the city both police, fire, and more than likely DPS operations if that event should occur. So. But going back to the letter itself, we'll start with that and have it on the meeting on March 20th to share with council and the community.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. Okay. Other comments?
Okay. Second item is I'd like to talk a little bit about something that occurred this last week involving the Sawyer Homestead, and in particular, there was. Individual that went to the county museum angry that there was a discussion about the potential County Museum taking over operations, and it was accusatory toward them. I want to make it abundantly clear, I am the one that initiated this conversation. The context of it was back in December when we received a call late just before Christmas to our Parks and Rec department of an individual that had made a reservation and was unable to get contact with anyone at the Sawyer Homestead for their reservation, needing the key. I contacted Judge Brown, who in turn got a hold of someone, and ultimately the individual was able to get the key to handle their reservation. It begged the question, should we consider looking at other alternatives in the future? I contacted Andy Clark with the County Museum and Brian Egan, the president of that, to see if there was any interest in that before I spoke with Judge Brown. I did. There was interest if the city wanted to pursue that. I spoke with Judge Brown, and certainly out of respect, deference, and appreciation for the work that he has done, he indicated that they are looking at some alternatives and some restructuring to continue serving that. And frankly, I dropped it at that point in time, shared that with Mr. Clark and Mr. Egan. And subsequently then, I understand last week, employees at the museum were approached and said that they would go to war if that was in fact the case. I want to resolve that real fast. This was my conversation, and it didn't go anywhere any further. City Council does have their lease expiring with the Sawyer Homestead at the end of the year. I know that certainly I've got a great deal of trust and confidence in working with Judge Brown, but I do think there has to be some understanding related to the purpose and of the Sawyer Homestead going forward and how it can best serve our community. It is clearly a city-owned asset and a community treasure that shares a great deal of significant history here in the city of Monroe. So I wanted to clarify that before I went anywhere else, that where this conversation initiated. Thank you.
Any comments from Mr. Pastu? Very well. Anything further?
No, that's enough.
Okay. Next, citizens' comments, and before we start, just be mindful of the rules of the chamber. 3 minutes, please, if you want to speak, your name, address, or city, or I'm sorry, or jurisdiction of residence, and that's it. Any comments from those present here this evening? Yes, Judge Brown. Welcome again. Great to see you.
Thank you to the council for passing this sublease and spending the money on repairing. I think we've had a very good relationship over the last 5 years since we renewed our lease. There were some concerns, I think, at the council at that time, but I think it's been fruitful for everyone. And we would like to continue that, and we'd like to have discussions with you soon as to renewing that lease. And my door is always open to talk to any of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge. I think the relationship over the years has been beneficial. I think that as we move forward with all of our assets within the city we've done previously, whether when we think about the sports complex, we think about the ALCC, our recreation programs that we are now have partnerships with the YMCA and others. It's always always good time to review things. I appreciate we know that the lease is through the end of the year, but early conversation is always better than later. So I appreciate your comments, and we look forward to having further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening? Other comments? Seeing I have one.
Yes, you know I'm here. Elliot James, 633 Stone Street. A few months ago, I wanted to know, being that we called the orchard, was we going to do anything about planting fruit trees? And I wanted to find out from anybody if anything went forward on that.
Good question. I don't know that it has. I'm looking at Mr. Pastu.
No, we
I know.
haven't done anything with that at this point in time. I know Mr. Lewis and the Urban Forestry Department's been focused on removing some of our silver maples and typically we end up putting an order in the fall for plantings for trees in the future. I probably would have to talk with you a little bit more about the details because I don't have a recollection of, some commitment on our standpoint related to planting some fruit trees anywhere specifically, so.
And I see Mr. Cochran also nodding his head, so there may be things. I know the tree committee we have, there's a variety of things that are under that, where they have not met yet, but we are going to be pulling that committee together. It's not just about trees where they planted, whether they're removed, but it could be in a broader policy as well with the community's input. Councilwoman Viney?
I vaguely recall we discussed it in the Orchard East planning, but I don't know if
Oh,
it
that-
made it to
that-
the actual document or not.
Thank you, and that's a great question there, Mr. James, but Mark's going to speak to the Orchard East.
Yes, it was part of the discussion in both the Orchard East Master Plan as well as the River Raisin Heritage Corridor Master Plan about some properties where we could actually plant enough trees to have an orchard instead of having sporadic fruit trees planted throughout the neighborhood, but to pay homage to the history and the name of the neighborhood, making sure that that was incorporated. And so it's actually in both plans identified. In an area around Hellenberg Park is one place that's been identified in the future, as well as the campus of the Opportunity Center with some of the community gardens having an opportunity there, and as well as other locations that are a possibility.
And
Councilwoman?
we already planted 4 apple trees, I forgot the varieties, at the Opportunity Center garden, and I think maybe this year they'll start to, where we'll be able to harvest.
Yep,
Or
it's
maybe
exciting.
next year. But soon we'll be able to start to harvest those apples,
Yeah,
so that's a start.
yeah.
Very good, thank you. So there's an
Thank
update, but also still a vision forward that is there a place for an orchard that would be, kind of similar in which they were many, many decades ago, century ago plus. So, very well. Other comments this evening?
Yes. Elliot James, 633 Stone Street. I want to know how far we're going ahead on Martin Luther King Bridge. Is there any new information on it?
Well, I'll look to Mr. Pastu, but I know tonight in the capital improvements, it was listed on there regarding the rehabilitation and lists the various funding that's listed for that. I don't know, Mr. Pastu, you want to speak further?
Thank you, Your Honor. There isn't any much more of an update with it. Still looking at some of the design aspects. The lighting was the most recent thing that we were looking at, but also some of the approaches. We know that on the south side, we'll be looking at that ramp area, probably taking out the stairs as part of the project. And then on the north side, really trying to make the connector so that it's ADA compliant at this point. I'll be in all candor, I'm very doubtful that it'll be a 2023 construction project. Like everything else, it seems to take longer than you would hope, but it'll roll into probably more than likely a 2024 construction. But it's still in the design and still reviewing it. In fact, I think we got Mr. Lewis, I don't know if he's back there, got something. Yeah, Mark's got it as well.
Thank you, Mr. James. I know that the Martin Luther King Bridge, the funding that was, within the capital improvements now really gets us to the mark, but as we know, as things continue to move down the path, sometimes it requires more funding. So as we start to get in working into engineering and the time frame to get that done and get some commitments, then we can get it, I'll just say rebuilt, but also refurbished. And the DDA is also provided $100,000 to the project as well regarding to the lighting that's looking to be done. I know that's still in the works of what type and what style will be there. So the DDA is having conversation as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Other comments from those here this evening? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Stilgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all for being here.